terms of Dynamics applications, and today is strategies to train your team and your clients. Train the trainer. Hello, good afternoon. Welcome to the D365 training. How are you, Alfredo? We have another training.
I'm very well, Gabriel. Thanks. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. And hello to our viewers. Right. Question 1. How do you prepare to deliver training to a new team? How do you prepare?
How do you prepare to deliver training to a new team? Well, when you start a new project, you need to look at a couple of things. First of all, you want to understand the company, your client's industry. Whether it's a small or medium organization, you need to arrange training in a certain way. But it's if it's it's a different size, of course, different industry. It's good to have to do some kind of research first, not just the project scope, right? Which is, of course, it's important, but just get a gist about the organization, because the organizations with companies typically experience similar challenges and they operate in a similar manner when they work in the same industry and have a similar size. So some research about the organization is always a good idea. Then trying to make it modular. So trying to look at maybe modular is not the right word really, but I'm trying to convey this message. Try to see to work with the delivery team and trying to understand what's in scope or what's not in scope, right? Too many consultants, sometimes even trainers, make the mistake to jump into training using their script. And we use a script all the time, really. But really, in business applications, the script is only going to get you to a certain point. It's good if you just start getting started and you know nothing about the application. Then you can go through the script, and we use also the scripts, right, when we go through the official Microsoft Learning material when we deliver training for certifications. That is scripted, right? That is the official Microsoft curriculum, and you cannot deviate from there. But when you need to train an organization who's going to implement an application, where you want a different approach, you want to learn about the organization, you want to learn about again the project, what's in scope, and so you really need to get the details about what the organization does and how they operate, right? Very important. The other element that you want to consider is that not to focus too much on modular training. What does it mean? Accounts payable, accounts receivable, inventory management, right? These are modules in the applications. And in Business Central, we still talk about modules, even though we don't really have that concept really anymore. In Dynamics 365 applications, we have modular training because we actually have the modules, right? And so, but the problem with modules is that it makes sense to work on a module by module, because as a consultant, this is how you work, right? And so on the project delivery, we first configure module A, then we configure module B. But when we deliver training, it's different. Organizations rarely operate in silos, right? Sales drive inventory management, right? Finance is related to treasury, bank account reconciliation, right? And so it's very important to structure training so that it follows a business flow. You get that by looking at the project documentations, by looking with the consultants with the analysis. If you use Azure DevOps, if you use spreadsheets, whatever works for your organization, you really want to structure your training so that you can take the client on a journey and you can teach them how to use the application in a way that mirrors what they will do after go live when they use the application, really. And so that is really what I think, what I advise. This is what I also, my approach when I do the training for new projects.
Okay, that's lovely. So just to kind of sort of sum that up a little bit, to begin with, research the company.
Yeah.
So you're talking about obviously size of the company, industry, products, and all the terminology around all of that. So
Yeah.
you're really focusing in on that specifically,
Yeah.
the project scope. So,
Yes.
so you make sure that the topic is really nicely focused, and then business areas, not modules. So you were talking about business processes there. I mean, I'm not technical at all, so I'm going to ask all the silly questions because
Not at all.
it's because it's absolutely a completely new subject
Yes.
to me. So that's very interesting. So business areas, not modules, and things overlapping. So that's an interesting. Could you just give
Yeah.
me a few more pointers
Yes.
on that?
Yes,
That was
absolutely.
quite.
So overlapping
Mm,
goes back to when I said about modular training, right? Modules. So consultants operate in modules. In larger projects, when you have the 365 supply chain management and finance and human resources, but also CRM, you have in specific consultants who work on these specific applications and modules, right? You might have a supply chain consultant, you might have a human resources consultant working on that specific module, the module only. But the problem with that approach is that you must use that approach to deliver the project. Configuration, data migration, right? UAT, you need specialized knowledge. But when it comes to training, supply chain management doesn't exist in isolation, right? It's all related to finance in terms of procurement, purchasing, and of course, transport costs. But it's also related to sales because with no sales, there's no need to ship, any products, right? And so sales drive the demand for supply chain management. Supply chain management needs to procure the stock, and procurement is linked to finance. Finance needs to pay the invoice for the items that we buy. So that is a link to treasury and payment management. So if you as a trainer think that you only need to deliver training for that specific module, you miss a point because you end up with this disconnected pieces of knowledge that you want to share, and people can your users can understand the specific features and pages, but they don't
mm,
get how everything flows from one area to another. Because a business is not just the sum of all the moving parts, right? It's all these moving parts working together to get the business moving forward. So we
yeah.
deliver training for sales. We need to include someone from supply chain management because they need to understand how sales drive the orders, right? We talk about purchasing. We need to involve someone from finance because we need to see how the costs and the budget of procuring and buying products and services affect finance and so on. So that must be included when you work out the training.
Yeah, yeah. So, so you're preparing to deliver training to a new team. You're thinking about adapting to the role, the person who is going to
Yes.
be taking this training. It may not be that you get to actually train everybody. That would be very nice to be able to do that, but you might actually just be giving that training to a member of the team who's then
Yes.
going to reshare that knowledge with their team.
Very true.
So, so you're looking at how you can make sure that they can then take that to the team and share it with the different roles in a way that will be fully understood, and yeah,
Yes,
to make
that's absolutely that's the last point
yeah.
in fact that I wanted to mention. So thanks for reminding me that, because in a in a project to deliver business applications, we work with sometimes tens of users, hundreds in larger projects,
Sure.
and and they all need learning, right? However, it's not very cost effective to put 200 people, over 20 classes,
Of
and
course.
it's not cost effective for the client. It's not really time. It's going to be time consuming. So train the trainer, right? We train the right person who can then share knowledge inside the organization. The same approach works when you train a consultant, right? You need to train a trainer. You need to train a consultant who will consult, deliver, right? Set up, configure, support, but also train the end user. So the way you structure and organize your training depends also on the users who will receive the training. So one thing is to train a user on how to use the application. Another thing is to train them so that they can absorb the knowledge and then pass and then share the knowledge with the rest of the team. So I give you an example. If I want you to train you, for example, to use customer relationship management, because that's your role as a business development manager, right? I will show you these are your leads, these are your opportunities, this is how you qualify a lead, right? This is how you create a campaign, and so on. And then you're equipped and you learn, and then you start doing it, right? Using it. If you have a problem, you come with me. You remind me. I got that page. Can you tell me again how do you do that? Okay, it's task related. The effort is about teaching you how to do stuff. With train the trainer, we need to use a different approach. So you need to get the knowledge, and you need to consider who is going to share that knowledge to, because in some organizations, in most organizations, right, training is expensive in terms also of time, right?
Or
If we need
yeah.
to spend hours training the accounts payable team to use Business Central or to use Dynamics 365, that team will use the time that they would normally spend at work doing work stuff, and instead of doing that, they train with us. So the organization loses money. So usually what they do, they send a middle manager, a line manager, maybe a junior consultant or junior role, say, look, attend the
Mm.
training, because if you spend 10 hours doing training, we still can manage your workload. And then take notes, right? Learn everything, and then come back to me and tell me how it works. And maybe I'm the manager. So imagine this junior role who needs to learn a new application, lots of new things to learn, right? But they also need to go back to their team and their manager and think, you know what, this is what I learned. Let me show you. And it can be too much. So what you want to do, you want to have a different approach. So instead of saying these are your opportunities, these are your leads, these are your quotes, right? This is your qualification process. You need also to consider something like this. Look, these are your leads. This is how you create your leads. When you're going to show your manager how to qualify leads, don't forget to mention that A, B, and C, because line managers will use certain features. People who use the system will use different features. So you
Hmm.
contextualize the training, taking into account how the company operates, and using simple language like that. When you show your colleagues how to do it, don't forget to. Or when you're telling your manager about this approval workflow, remember that approval, say, person who needs to approve the record is called approver, right? The requester is someone who requests the person who sent it, and so on. So you frame it in a way so they just they don't just learn how to use the system, they learn how to teach other people how to use the system. This is key, right?
Yeah. Yeah. That's leading into the next point, really, which is all about teaching, which is obviously as a trainer, it's a very, very important and valuable skill to have. And that's an area that I do have a lot of experience in teaching, but obviously
Yeah.
in a different industry, in a different field. So, what are the most important skills a business application trainer should develop?
Business application trainers should develop teaching skills, as you correctly said. Your background is
Hmm.
also in teaching, although it's a different subject. Um, but that you know that teaching require um, certain characteristics, and so
Absolutely.
teaching skills are essential. To be a trainer, you need to be a teacher, and teaching skills transcend the specific subject, right? A good math teacher, a good science teacher, a good music teacher, right? Um, it's no different than a business application trainer or teacher. It's the ability to share and pass the knowledge, right? Not just to give instructions, because everybody can write a list and a manual. Here, memorize the manual. It's the ability to grow personnel. So at the end of the teaching um, exercise experience, it can be a few hours, it can be years if you are a school teacher. Your goal is to get people um, with not just knowledge, right, but wisdom, the ability to navigate under uncertainty, right? It's personal development and professional development. So the ability to pass, to enrich, people say, you know what, I'm better equipped now because of the teacher. So teacher skills. And by the way, if you want to become a Microsoft certified trainer like myself, like our certified trainers that work with us, you need, before you get the Microsoft certification, but you must have the certifications, you must show and work with an independent professional training provider who can certify, and Microsoft only work with some highly selected companies that can certify that you are qualified again to be a trainer instead of trainer. And I will show you if I find it online, but I have it on my material. That it's a third-party company. It says Alfredo is certified as a professional trainer. So it's pretty much having a teaching right a qualification so that you can get a job in a school. So the ability to leave your students better than they were before, in a way. It's a transformative experience, and that's something you must deliver. In addition to that, business applications require, of course, you need to know your application, but that's a given, right? We're not going to spend time about that. You need business skills. So business skills are essential. We often make the mistake to get into technical mode, and it's all about fields and pages and tables and queries and logic and links, and you don't enrich people, you don't equip them if you talk in technical language. Engineering, IT, again, art teacher. Can an art teacher teach students how to become better artists if all they talk about is paint, colors, pigments, right, brushes and canvas? It's important, right? But it's not all about that, right?
It's an interesting point, isn't it? Because
Yeah.
you can be an excellent consultant, or in the example you're just using, an excellent artist, but to actually transfer the skills so that they, and this is something that we talk about a lot, is that they stick. Yes, they're sticky, so that then that person can move forward and with the full understanding of what they're doing, confidently impart that knowledge in a way that other people then they can understand it within their capacity, so then they can go out and teach it. And that's actually a different discipline, isn't it? It's actually a different way of helping others learn. And it's not a given. Just being a consultant isn't just a given to being a good trainer, is it? So it's a really it's a nice one, that.
Very true.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So being a consultant, you can be a very good consultant and not a good trainer. And I know a lot of them. I work with them all the time. They are incredibly knowledgeable and really capable.
Sure.
But when I ask them to give me some, to teach me what they know, or to teach the users, it's a nightmare. And you can also have the other extreme, where you have very capable trainers who can go through their, let's say, the script incredibly well. They remember every slide and everything, and they can actually memorize it. They can do it with their eyes closed. But the moment you ask them a question, so how do I apply that concept in real life? Or maybe they say, hold on a moment, I have a client who asked me about that feature, but they need to use it in a slightly different way. How I can advise them? And then you can see they freeze, they're lost, because they never really had the opportunity to work on an application, right? Or to consult a client. And the moment you ask the question that takes them off script, they're lost. And so that is really what should not happen, right?
Lovely. Okay, so moving on to common training challenges. I'm sure there are many. We probably don't have time to go through all of them, Alfredo, so I'll just warn you of that right now. How can trainers overcome the common training challenges? We can just outline 2 or 3
Yes,
for our
so
listeners today?
quickly, a
Yeah.
few. So the first one is mm, a personal challenge because we technical trainers have the tendency to use technical jargon, as I said before, because it's our bread and butter.
Hmm.
And so it makes sense to us, and we use our language, our terminology. I don't use language, but again, use the word language in a metaphorical sense. We use our own terminology, and this usually puts people off. For a
Hmm.
number of reasons, we might have um, users or learners with enough technical knowledge. However, if they are used to other applications, for example, if I'm giving training, Microsoft training to a user who used to um, work with SAP, they might be very technical, they may know a lot of stuff, but the terminology will be very different. And if I use Microsoft terminology that doesn't match with SAP terminology, the user will be lost. What are you referring to? So avoid technical jargon. It's a challenge because it's a bad habit. It's a habit, but it's a habit that we must challenge ourselves. Um, Another challenge challenges also often come from users, and you have a couple of challenging users, I would say, just to keep it succinct. When users are unengaged, and so sometimes users that just don't want to be there, right? They would rather, work on Sunday rather than spending time, training. And it's just something that some people just don't like to do it because maybe they prefer self-learning. They will, won't give me a couple of hours of video, give me a manual, I will read over the weekend. I will try with my sandbox. And that's
Yeah, people
okay.
have very different learning styles, don't they? So you need to sort of work with that, don't you?
Exactly, and so if
Mm.
users is not engaged, we're trying to ask questions. So pause, right? Make it hands-on. Like, let's do an exercise. Why don't you try it, right? But don't push it too hard because again, some people say, I don't like to be put on the
On the
spotlight,
spot.
right?
Yeah,
Exactly, and so you
yeah,
don't want to be able to make people feel uncomfortable. So try to understand, and if someone doesn't engage, it's okay. At the end of the training session, you might reach out to them and say something like this: like, I noticed that you didn't really, interact. Is there anything we can do for you? I mean, it's, maybe I did, or say something that made you uncomfortable. Did I cause you some kind of, was I the reason why you felt uncomfortable, you didn't engage? And so when you put it on yourself, usually you get the most really genuine, authentic responses. And people come to me very often saying, "Oh, Fredo, there's nothing wrong with you. It's just that I don't like to 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 work on group exercises, but I took notes and I will work on that when I'm not busy. And then if I have any question, I will get back to you." And that's perfectly
right.
okay. And that's
Yeah,
really it.
different learning styles. Yeah.
Absolutely, very important. The last thing that I want to close on this one, unless you got something to say, sorry.
No, it's like, no, carry on.
Thank you. Um, the mm, the other challenging kind of type of user is the expert, right? Those who believe they know it all. And you might have heard about the Dunning-Kruger effect, when you have a confidence, right, and competence um, diagram, right? And so it
Mm.
starts when you have no competence, zero, you have no confidence. So I know nothing about the system, I'm here to learn. But then the moment they get a tiny bit of competence, then their confidence goes up. So the typical result is that, oh, right, I know how it works now, right? I know all about that. And that's all I need to know. Funny enough, I was delivering a training session about supply chain management planning and material requirement planning earlier today. And it's arguably one of the most complex topics in an ERP, material requirement planning. I went through the slides, 45 minutes. I did a quick demo, 10 minutes using the application. And the supply
Right.
chain manager said, I asked the question, do you have any question for me? And he said, no, I understand how it works.
Mm.
That's all I need. He actually told me, and to the entire team, that's all I needed to learn, to know. That's hardly true because it's not it was the first time that person saw the application. There is no way, right, after a 45 minutes PowerPoint and 10 minutes demo, you can understand all about material requirement planning. And so that's overconfidence. And so how do you overcome overconfidence? Features are not processes. And that's what you must convey. Users might get and might learn features, pages, but unless you go through a process, end-to-end process, you don't get it, right? And so the role of a good user, a good trainer, and so, look, these are the features, these are the terminology, these are the pages, then the processes, right? Sales, purchases, right? The overlapping, right? As I mentioned before. That is the most challenging part. Those who believe that they got nothing more to learn, the only thing that you can do with them is be patient, because eventually they will come back to you and they say, you know what, I thought that's all I needed to know. I started working with the application, and then I understand now that maybe I need a tiny bit more training, more than 15 minutes for material requirement planning. Yeah, you probably need a week. But again, I'll give you an extra 4 or 5 hours and we can work together, right?
Yeah, that's interesting. So in terms of, you're talking specifically about the training challenges when it comes to the response of the users and how they're engaging with the training material,
yeah.
and how difficult that can be to get right. So what are the ways to overcome that? I mean, how are you presenting that training material? What are your different ways, talking about different learning styles, and practically what can you do to kind of ensure that you're going to get that maximum engagement? Because obviously you can't have a different learning style to suit everyone. That's really down to them to take that material away and
Exactly.
refocus on it in their own time and in their own way.
Absolutely.
But yeah,
So how
yeah,
do you do? Well, look, uh, one-to-one training is very expensive, and so
of
when we
course.
work with teams, unfortunately, we need to find a good balance. Because
Hmm.
the ideal learning experience is where I work with you and then I work with your colleague, right? And we talk about the same topic, but in a different way. That's not realistically, that's not possible. One-to-one coaching for an entire organization is not achievable, right?
No, it's
Uh,
very slow.
right. So you need to find a balance, and the balance is based on best practices, really, but also trying to work with your client to see who's best suited for the role. So
Yeah.
Microsoft Success by Design, which is the Microsoft framework to deliver Dynamics applications, talks about a training strategy. This is where
Hmm.
most partners fail, in my experience. And I would say most of all fail because there is never a strategy. A strategy is it's something that you do. It's a set of, let's say, it's designing a plan that will help you navigate through uncertainty. And uncertainty is about how would people respond, right? The users respond to training. Strategy means I work with your client, I work with the project sponsors. Who should attend the training, right? Strategy. It's based on decisions. What's the ideal format? How often, right? So you it's going to be still a compromise because, as I said, you cannot possibly accommodate for everything. Otherwise,
Yeah.
it's going to be incredibly expensive. But you plan that ahead and you fit the training strategy into the delivery strategy. And so, which means the project sponsor, project manager, the client side can say, you know what, for supply chain management, because it's very heavy in our organization, I want a supply chain manager. But then for finance and accounting, which is relatively automated and straightforward, and we have a team of experts, and they already have expertise with accounting software. I only want the junior and the administrators, right? Because they want to, right? And then maybe we can spend 3 days full on one section, and maybe we can spend, I don't know, 4 half days on another section, and and again, you ask the client, project manager usually, who's do you think we should involve, right? Who's more eager to learn and to share it, right? And so you work in advance. It's always going to be, as I said, a compromise. But if you plan in advance, you work with this training strategy, and you adapt it to your client, pretty much like you adapt your business application to your client. You adapt your training strategy, and then would really maximize your chances to deliver effective training. It will make a huge difference.
Lovely, thank you very much. I think we've reached the end of our half-an-hour training bites. They are just mini.
Yes.
So if anyone has any questions, we welcome your questions. So please pop them in the comments, or feel free to drop myself or Alfredo a message, and we can answer those questions if you have any, anything you want answered on those topics. Thank you, Alfredo. That's great. And what did we have coming up for next week?
What do we have coming for next week?
Or have we not decided yet?
I don't think we have decided yet, have we?
I don't think we have.
It's okay. What should we do? Maybe someone can make a comment here and let us know what they would like
absolutely.
To comment. Maybe we can talk about the best support material, right? For training. Do we need support material at all? That's a question that I get all the time. Do we need training manuals? Nobody wants to write training manuals, to be honest with you. Training manuals that are already built are just too generic, and they don't work. But writing training manuals are very expensive. Who is going to pay a consultant daily rate so the consultant can write manuals? And most of the time, consultants like me don't necessarily write very good manuals, right? Because again, it's a different skill set. So training manuals, yes or no? Video recording, yes or no? Does it work? Does it not work? In-person training, online training, I don't know. Maybe we can talk about training delivery, or we can talk about other subjects. Again, just sharing your comments, really. Excellent. I can see lots of comments. Very insightful. Thank you very much. Charlotte, thank you very much. Really useful. Lovely. Joanna, thank you for this. Was very useful. Lovely. So we get some good feedback. Maybe we can get a suggestion about, the next topic. If not, we will find something.
We'll come up with something. Thank you very much, Alfredo.
Thank you, Gabriella. Talk soon.
See you soon. Bye now.